So I'm here with Philppa Von Zeigenweidt. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Laura.
Hi. You're the spokesperson for CAMPP in Windsor, Ontario, which is a grassroots group that was formed to give a way for citizens to have a voice during the planning process of the mega hospital that they have proposed in our area. Municipal governance and planning are more and more being placed under the control of the Premier directly through priorities and mayors, which appear to be in tune with each other. This is all being done in the name of addressing a housing crisis that we're going to touch on today. But the powers are very broad and relate to the economy as a whole. Since you've been following and intervening in municipal politics, what have you observed and experienced in this light, whether in the case of the mega hospital or otherwise?
I feel that this is a very, very complex discussion, and I can have opinions and talk about my observations, and might actually sound like I'm all over the place. So I feel that power has concentrated in fewer hands, and I feel that when residents speak up, they are not heard. And then at the same time, when they feel that they're not heard, then they become more disengaged, and then that only allows the power to concentrate even further. And you can see that in this discussion with the mayoral powers or the provincial powers. And if you go back to the election where Doug Ford was first elected, at first he was caught telling the developers that he was going to develop the Greenbelt. There was a huge outcry. Right. He promised he wasn't going to develop the Greenbelt. Then he was quiet for a little while, and then I don't know how long ago it was that we found out that the Greenbelt is going to be developed after all, and people are upset again. But I feel the government is not listening. They're not reacting. They're not listening to the people who are saying that this is a bad thing. So the problem is, are we going to fight it further, or are we going to just say, well, there's no point? So that disengagement is what I'm seeing. And yet with the Greenbelt, that land there were very concrete deals. When they established that Greenbelt land, it was supposed to be not developed ever. And so if we're going to be putting houses on wetlands, not only is that destroying the environment and the natural means of preventing flooding, or at least resolving flooding when we've got more rain, but it's also going to set up these homeowners for problems in the future, which has happened in Oakville, for example. There's been a lot of development on land that's subsequently flooded. Residents are upset that their houses are flooding, but they bought their houses on floodplains, so they're in trouble. And in closer to home in Windsor, in East Riverside, that's a problem as well. That land is floodplain. If you buy a house in East Riverside, my understanding is you have to sign a waiver to say that that your house is on land that could flood, and so you have fewer protections through your insurance or other means.
Right. So what is the situation in housing specifically in Windsor? I know you kind of touched on it with the issue of people living in the floodplain, but right now, especially like municipally, right, we're talking about, there's so many new Canadians who are coming in. We need to develop all this housing. Yep. We need to build, which is also why they said that they needed these mayoral powers in Toronto and Ottawa. What is the situation that you know of right now?
I wish I knew exactly what the answer was. The narrative right now is that we need to develop more greenfield land, and we have more immigration coming in. It's almost as if we're being told that we need to develop our farmland in order to accommodate the immigrants, and I don't buy that. I feel that if our immigration is intended to supplement the demographic shift, then we should not need to develop farmland in order to accommodate those people, because in theory, at least, as our older people move on, maybe they move into retirement homes, people pass away, we're all shifting, and the immigrants would be moving into the homes that are freed up, or at least we all it's like a game of musical chairs or musical houses. There should be enough houses, roughly speaking, but when we're developing greenbelt land, the intention seems to be building single family dwellings. We're not building like immigrants are not moving into the greenbelt by and large. The idea is those are sort of larger, more luxurious homes. So I feel that the entire mechanism of what's going on is not honest. I think we don't have the data to support the actions, and I feel that there's a lot of money being made on. So maybe rather than resolving the issues, it's more about making money and expanding GDP, and it's about economic development rather than addressing the problems.
Or looking at those two things as diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you kind of touched on was this idea that, we have, say, maybe new Canadians moving in, or different people who from different parts of Canada who are moving into different areas. One of the numbers in Windsor, in our area, was that the city wanted to have 13,000 homes being built. Often the numbers are just kind of thrown around, and we even talked about in this context, like who even needs housing, or are there other things like retirement homes or other things like that might be required in terms of services, schools, hospitals, right? To be able to accommodate all the people who come, because these people are not just numbers, they're human beings and they have rights to different things, and they should have the services that they require. Especially housing, which obviously is their right, a human right. What do you think is required to address the needs of that growing population? You kind of touched on the who is that population, which is important to know, and then be able to have those services.
And what also makes it complex and a little confusing is that we have needs in the city and also in Windsor, Essex. So sometimes the numbers that we see are for the entire community, and sometimes they're the city only. So it's difficult to know what we're talking about. When CAMPP appealed the zoning for the mega hospital, at the time the city was saying we need 6,900 new homes to serve the city for the next 20 years. So that was the figure that they were working with. And at the time, Chris Holt tried to get a motion on the table to figure out that number more accurately, and the councillors were talking about a target market analysis, which would be, it's an analysis that figures out like exactly what we need. So historically in Windsor, Essex, we've built about 70% of our houses as single family dwellings. And while the population is young and growing, and the environment's not on our horizon, and there's plenty of farmland, it's easy to just keep building single family homes and expanding outwards and having more urban sprawl. As we're aging, and maybe as families are having fewer children, and as we're becoming more aware of the environment, we need different kinds of houses. So rather than everybody needing single family dwellings, maybe living in an apartment is more appropriate for where you are in your stage of life, or maybe the higher end McMansions are not affordable for everybody. So we need different kinds of houses so we need different price points, we need different sizes. And that's not to say that you will live in this, that anybody's restricting you, but we need to know what data exists to support what we're doing. And so it starts with needing to start with that data. We just don't have that. So the city said that we had a need, a 20-year need for 6,900 homes.
Okay.
As of today, I've tracked about almost 11,000 housing units in Windsor. This is not Windsor, Essex, in Windsor.
That have been built or that are required?
That have been planned.
Okay.
Some of them have been built. Some of them are like the subdivisions in East Riverside that have continued. There are housing developments that have popped up. They were built very quickly, and people have moved in, so they're done. Others are still in the planning stages. So I've mapped these out. So we're looking at, in the space of about 4 years, we've been able to plan, build 11,000. So it's basically 150% of our 20-year need has already been documented. So this goes back to data.
Yeah.
Maybe the figure of 6,900 homes was not accurate to begin with. But then that goes back to my point. We should have had proper data to support what we really need.
Right. And everybody should have that data in the sense that like you're following it as a citizen. There's counselors, I'm sure, who would want to look into this and follow it. And without that information, how can we go forward? But it's fantastic that you're able to follow up whatever it is we are able to find out, because by doing that we can start to then have this question, because if they needed 6,900, well,
then that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then are those homes, like what's going on?
And then now we're saying that fewer people are coming from the GTA to Windsor. Interest rates are higher, so maybe things are changing again. So now would be another good time to just stop and take stock of what we have and what will we be needing in the future.
Right. And this issue of the market and where things are at and what people can afford and what they're looking to do, and who are, like you said, who are the people who are coming. Are we needing single family homes? Maybe we need multiple family homes.
Yeah, let's see where we're at.
Right.
And so when the city says we need so many thousands of new homes, are they talking about homes that are on top of the 11,000 that are already that are in process or finished, or are they, how does that number figure, how does that relate to the 6,900 that we said 4 years ago that we would be needing for the next 20 years?
Right. And has that slowed down? Have you seen that it's slowed down at all?
Well, we need to find out.
Right.
And so now if we're having more immigration than we were a couple of years ago, that might increase the need. So I do see that. But we also have more older people who are looking for smaller homes. And on top of that, in the last couple of years, there's been an acceleration in the number of condos and apartments and townhomes. And I don't think that all of those were in the process 4 years ago when we said we needed 6,900. So if seniors are able to sell their bigger homes and move into something smaller, then that might change the environment. So we need to start with the data. And I think we should also be asking the question, is if that 6,900 figure was wrong, why did we get it wrong? And like, what did we learn from that? And how do we know that the real figure is accurate? And how are we going to evaluate that? So I can't say what the answers are, like what we need, because we don't have the data to say what we need. But anecdotally, I can say that we need more homes like that, more condos, more apartments. And I think that the incentives that the city has put together to build, to renovate some of the more derelict buildings downtown, those have been good solutions. So that's part of the solution of getting there. So we still have far too many empty lots in and around Windsor. We have way too many surface parking lots that used to be buildings where people used to live. We could be developing all of that. So that's all part of the solution of where we need to get. Yeah, it's so complex. Last week when the housing numbers came out for December, in the Windsor Star story, there was a comment by a realtor, and he was saying that the speculation from 2021 is largely gone. So all the people who were coming from the GTA and buying rental houses or second homes, a lot of that air has come out of the market. And that was really I was surprised to read that, because it was one of the first times that I've seen somebody admit in public that it was speculation. I was hearing, my dental hygienist was flipping houses, and our neighbors were flipping houses. Everybody was flipping houses, but it was all anecdotal.
Right.
And it's interesting to see like how much of the market is real, and how much of it is just flipping, and how actually, while people are flipping houses, how many houses were empty. That's actually something else that I wonder about. And now that it's maybe settling down, maybe we'll see where the real need is.
Yeah, and without that data, but that data playing a very key role in that.
It starts with the data.
Absolutely. And is there anything specific coming out by council, like at the municipal level, that maybe is of something we should watch out for?
Well, one issue that I'm looking at right now is a proposal coming to council next week, where there's a proposal to add 2 natural gas turbines to the energy plant that's between Wyandotte and Riverside at Drulard. So they're saying that they need these 2 turbines. I mean, I know it's got nothing to do with housing, but that's what's coming up. So they need these turbines to meet our energy needs, our peak energy needs. The irony of this is they're justifying it because we need it in order to increase our economic development, for the battery plants and our future automotive industry. So we're building an industry for the future. But what these turbines are to be run on natural gas, which the city has committed to phasing out. And on top of that, in the presentation, it says, well, they justify this by saying, well, these turbines can run on hydrogen. But if you look into hydrogen comes from fracked natural gas. So actually, if you run these turbines on hydrogen, it's actually worse than natural gas. So what we're doing is we're tying ourselves up in knots. We're talking about sustainability, but at the same time, we're still also justifying making poor environmental choices by saying, well, we need it for the economy. And that's a problem that I have. I just don't think that we are going about it the right way.
Well, that's definitely something to look out for. Yeah. So we really appreciate you coming on and definitely talking about some of these things that we're all concerned about, and you're following it very well. And obviously all of this helps to contribute to people being informed, and more information that we all have, the better it is.
Yeah, I don't think I have the answers, but I like to think about what are the questions. So thank you very much for inviting me.